I have set out only to seek reform. Is law of my grandfather's ummah. I want to enjoin goodness and forbid evil, and to follow the seerah of my grandfather and my father. Imam Hussein.
Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. رضا بقضائه وتسليما لأمره لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل نعم المولى ونعم النصير صلى الله عليك يا سيدي ويا مولاي يا أبا عبد الله صلى الله عليك يا سيدي يا ابن رسول الله صلى الله عليك يا سيدي يا ابن أمير المؤمنين صلى الله عليك يا سيدي يا ابن فاطمة الزهراء صلى الله عليك يا أبا عبد الله الحسين يا غريب ويا مظلوم كربلاء أما بعد فيا أهل عزاء الحسين أعظم الله أجورنا وأجوركم بمصابنا بسيدنا ومولانا أبي عبد الله الحسين وجعلنا الله وإياكم من السالكين على نهجه المقتفين لأثره والمهتدين بهديه. Brothers and sisters in Iman, today is the day of Ashura. Today is a day unlike any other day. To understand the magnitude and gravity of this day and what transpired on this day, I urge you to reflect on the fact that the Imams of Ahlul Bayt, these great grandmasters of spirituality, these awliya of Allah, these friends of Allah, were no strangers to adversity. The Prophet of Allah has already informed us that أشد الناس بلاء في الدنيا الأنبياء. The people who suffer the most in the life of this world, the people who go through the most difficult tests are the Anbiya, the messengers, the chosen ones of Allah. ثم الأمثل فالأمثل. Then those who are the best and the best. So Ahlul Bayt are no strangers of tragedy. They all went through difficulties. They all went through tragedies. Right from the first one of them, Rasulullah, he is the one who told us that مَا أُوذِيَ نَبِيٌّ قَطْ كَمَا أُوذِيت. No messenger was tortured and harassed and persecuted the way I was. Come to Amirul Mu'mineen. You see him telling his own followers, لَقَدْ جَرَّعْتُمُونِيَ الْغُصَص. You people have made me drink my own blood. Come to Imam Hassan al-Mujtaba, you see the same thing. Come to Fatima al-Zahra, she is the one who says, صُبَّتْ عَلَيَّ مَصَائِبٌ لَوْ أَنَّهَا صُبَّتْ عَلَى الْأَيَّامِ صِرْنَ لَيَالِيَا. Tragedies and calamities that befell me after Rasulullah, if they had befallen a brightly shining day, it would have turned into a dark night. So the Ahlul Bayt are no strangers to adversity. But subhanallah, look at the power and magnitude of the day of Ashura. Look at the day of Aba Abdullah, that this is a day and this is a tragedy that when all the Imams of Ahlul Bayt look at it in a collective voice, in unison they declare, they address Aba Abdullah and they say, La yawmaka yawmika ya Aba Abdullah. There is no day like your day, O Aba Abdullah. There is no tragedy like your tragedy, O Aba Abdullah. Not just the Imams who come after him, but even the Imams who came before him. In the Maqtal of Amirul Mu'mineen, we are told, when Amirul Mu'mineen was struck by the poisonous sword of Ibn Muljim, he is lying on his bed. This is his deathbed. Imam al-Hussein approaches him. He sees him in that condition. Blood is flowing profusely from his head. He addresses his father. He says, Ya izzu Allah alayya an araka ya abata في هذه الحال. He says, it pains me, O my father, to see you in this condition. لا يومك يومك يا أمير المؤمنين إلا يوم رسول الله. There is no day, O Amir al-Mu'mineen, that has been as difficult for us as this day, except for the day of Rasulullah. Amir al-Mu'mineen turns to him, he looks at him, he grabs his hand, he says, La yawmaka yawmika ya Aba Abdullah. He says, no, there is going to be no day in our history like your day, O Aba Abdullah. Allahu Akbar. Where do we begin when we describe this day? Let's begin from the night of Ashura, because what happens there sets the scene for what's to follow on this day. On the night of Ashura, Imam Sajjad narrates, as is mentioned in the Maqtal of Ibn Jarir al-Tabari and Irshad of Shaykh al-Mufid, he says, my father, after all the negotiations failed, he comes back to the tent and he collects all his family members. He collects all his ashab, he gathers them together and he addresses them. Look at how he addresses them. He says, Ahmadullah tabaraka wa ta'ala wa uthni alayhi khayra thana. He says, I glorify the praises of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As you weep for Aba Abdullah, learn the lessons as well. This is a day of transformation. This is a day when with tears in our eyes we repent to Allah from our sins and we rededicate ourselves to the religion for which Aba Abdullah gave his life. And we tell, Ya Allah, we will not allow these tears to go in vain. We will use them to transform ourselves. Imam al-Hussein begins by glorifying Allah and he says, Ya Allah, we thank you for having honored us with the Quran and with the prophethood and with the message and with guidance. And after delivering his sermon, he addresses his ashab and his ansar. He says, Ala inni ara anna yawmi min ha'ula'i al-a'da'i ghada. He says, I feel like my time has come. My day with these enemies is going to be tomorrow. Now these enemies are not after anyone but me. All they want is my head. They're not even after my family members. They couldn't care less. As long as they get my head, they're happy and satisfied. هَذَا اللَّيْلْ قَدْ غَشِيَكُمْ فَاتَّخِذُوهُ جَمْلًا. This night has overshadowed you. Use it as a means to leave me. Leave the battlefield. If you are concerned about the bay'ah that you have given me, the oath of allegiance that you have offered me, insarifu wantaliqu. I am telling you, you have my full permission to leave me and desert me because I have absolved you of the responsibility of this bay'ah. Allahu Akbar. When the ashab and ansar and ahlul bayt of Imam al-Hussein hear this, look at their reaction. The first to stand up from the youths of the Banu Hashim is Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas. This is a truly unique scene in the Maqtal. Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas was the son of Amir al-Mu'mineen. He was known for his eloquence, but this is the one moment where his eloquence fails him because he is so overcome with emotion. Addressing Aba Abdullah, he says, وَلِمَ نَفْعَلُ ذَلِكَ يَا مَوْلَايَ يَا أَبَا Abdullah. Why should we do that? لِنَبْقَى بَعْدَكَ. So that we should remain alive after you? لَا وَاللَّهِ لَا أَرَانَ اللَّهُ ذَلِكَ الْيَوْمَ أَبَدًا. May Allah never ever show us that day when we are alive after you've left this world. Allahu Akbar. The children of Aqil. Remember, the family of Aqil is the family that contributed the largest number of shuhada to Karbala. Imam al-Hussein addresses them specifically. He singles them out. He says, Hasbukum min al-qatli bi Muslim ibn Aqil. He says, sufficient for you is the blood of Muslim. You don't need to worry about yourselves now. You can show your face to Rasulullah and say that we contributed Muslim bin Aqil. Allahu Akbar. The youths of Al-Aqil, they respond by saying, Ya Ibna Rasulillah, إِذَنْ مَاذَا يَقُولُ النَّاسِ. What do you want the books of history to record about us? You want the books of history to record that أَنَّا تَرَكْنَا شَيْخَنَا وَسَيِّدَنَا وَبَنِي عَمُومَتِنَا خَيْرِ الْأَعْمَالِ أعمام ولم نرمي معهم بسهم ولم نطعن معهم برمح ولم نضرب معهم بسيف. You want the books of history to write about us that we deserted and abandoned the son of Rasulullah, our cousin brother, our sheikh, our Syed, our master, our chief, our leader in the moment of need? Is that what you want to go down in the books of history? ولم نرمي معهم بسهم, that we did not defend him with our arrows and our spears and our swords? They said, لا والله لا يكون ذلك أبدا. ta'ala, by Allah that will never happen. وَلَكِنْ تَفْدِيكَ أَرْوَاحُنَا وَأَنفُسُنَا وَأَجْسَادُنَا وَأَطْفَالُنَا. They say, Ya Imam, our souls will be ransom for your souls. Our bodies will act as shields for your body. Our children will defend your children, and we will not rest until we have laid down our lives in support of you. Allahu Akbar. These were the youths. Look at the senior citizens. Muslim bin Awsaja, you heard his response earlier. Zuhair ibn al-Qayn gets up. He says, Yabna Rasulillah, if I were to be killed and then burnt and then resurrected and then killed and then burnt, yuf'alu bi dhalika sab'ina marratan. Even if that was done with me 70 times, I would get up the 71st time with a desire to lay down my life for this cause. فَكَيْفَ وَإِنَّمَا هِيَ قَتْلَةٌ وَاحِدَةٌ. So how about when it's only just one death we are talking about? Syed ibn Abdullah al-Hanafi says the same thing. Allahu Akbar. It is after this that the Imam remarks. He says, Ama wallah, inni la a'lamu ahla baytin abarra wa la awsala min ahli bayti. He says, I do not know of any family more loyal and more loving than my family. Wala ashaban abarra wa la awfa min ashabi. And I do not know of any companions who are more loyal and loving and caring than my ashab. Allahu Akbar. The day of Ashura comes. I want to present to you scenes from the Maqtal. It's very difficult. The Maqtal of Imam al-Hussein runs over 160 pages. I will just present you select scenes from this Maqtal. We're told in the Maqtal, لما أصبح الحسين يوم عاشوراء صلى بأصحابه صلاة الصبح قام خطيبا فيهم حمد الله وأثنى عليه وقال إن الله أذن في قتلكم وقتلي فعليكم بالصبر والقتال. Imam al-Hussein on the day of Ashura led Salatul Fajr. All the companions and ashab, they prayed behind him. After Salatul Fajr, he addressed them. He said, Oh my companions, today Allah has ordained death for us. So I admonish you and I enjoin you to fight with bravery and with patience. And then the riwayah says, ثُمَّ صَفَّهُمْ لِلْحَرْبِ. He organized them into their battle formations. فجعل زهير بن القين في الميسرة وجعل حبيب بن مظاهر الأسدي في الميسرة وأعطى رايته أخاه العباس. He placed Zuhair ibn al-Qayn as commander of the right flank, and then he placed Habib ibn Mudahir as the commander of the left flank. وَثَبَتَ هُوَ وَأَهْلُ بَيْتِهِ عَلَيْهِ السَّلَامِ فِي الْقَلْبِ. Together with his Ahlul Bayt, he formed the center, because the center of the army is where the most vicious attacks take place. So he wanted those to be on him and his nearest ones. Allahu Akbar. After that, we are told that the army of Umar ibn Sa'd arrives in Karbala. The army of Umar ibn Sa'd, they began to arrange themselves in the formations. There were 30,000 of them, we are told. And the riwayah in the Maqtal says, وَعَلَى الْمَيْمَنَةِ عَمْرُ بْنِ الْحَجَّاجِ الزَّبِيدِ وَعَلَى الْمَيْسَرَةِ شِمْرُ بْنُ ذِي الْجَوْشَنِ الْعَامِرِ. The commander of the right flank was Amr ibn al-Hajjaj al-Zabidi. The commander of the left flank was Shimr ibn Dhil Jawshan al-Amiri. وَعَلَى الْخَيْلِ عُزْرَةُ بْنُ قَيْسٍ الْأَحْمَسِ. Uzrat ibn Qais al-Ahmasi was the commander of the cavalry, the horsemen. And Shibath ibn Rab'i was the commander of the infantry. And their flag was with his slave, whose name was Dhuwayd. Allahu Akbar. After that, as the day progresses, Imam al-Hussein goes out to the army of Yazid. He addresses them, he admonishes them, he delivers his sermons. After Imam al-Hussein, one by one, ashab of Aba Abdullah al-Hussein address the army of Yazid. Zuhair ibn al-Qayn addresses them. Burayr ibn Khudayr al-Hamadani addresses them. Al-Hurr ibn Yazid al-Riyahi addresses them. But there is no benefit. No one is prepared to listen to them. After that, they come back and they join Imam al-Hussein. Umar ibn Sa'd then steps forward. He takes aim with his arrow and he shoots an arrow towards the tents of Aba Abdullah, thereby signaling the start of the battle. And he says, Ishhadu li indal amiri Ubaydillah ibn Ziyad anni awwalu man rama. Testify for me in the presence of the Amir Ubaydillah ibn Ziyad that I am the first to strike at the tents of Aba Abdullah. And then as soon as he does that, the soldiers follow suit. They begin to rain down arrows towards the tents of Aba Abdullah. Imam al-Hussein instructs his ashab. He says, "Qumu rahimakumullah, hadhihi rusulul qawmi ilaykum." He says, "Oh my ashab, stand up. These arrows, these are the messengers of the people towards you." After that, the ashab of Imam al-Hussein, they launch a collective attack against the army of Yazid. They fight with valor and bravery, and they wreak havoc into the army of Yazid. But Allahu Akbar, the riwayah in the Maqtal says that the fighting that broke out was so fierce that فَمَنْ جَلَتِ الْغَبْرَ, the whole battlefield was a complete maze of confusion. There was dust everywhere. Visibility was very low. But the riwayah in the Maqtal says, فَمَنْ جَلَتِ الْغَبْرَ إِلَّا وَخَمْسِينَ مِنْ أَصْحَابِ أَبِي عَبْدِ اللَّهِ صَرِيعًا. The riwayah in the Maqtal says, when the dust settled and the fighting subsided, 50 of the Ansar of Aba Abdullah al-Hussein were lying on the plains of Karbala. Allahu Akbar. Imam lost such a huge number of ashab in this first attack, and because of that now the ashab of Imam al-Hussein cannot fight together. They are forced to fight in single combat. That's why the ashab after this begin to fight single-handedly. But Allahu Akbar, you notice a striking difference here. In the time of Rasulullah, it would always be the Ahlul Bayt who would step first to fight, and the ashab would be kept in the reserve. But in the battle at Karbala, the Ahlul Bayt are being kept in the reserve, the ashab are being allowed to go first. There were two reasons for this. From the perspective of Aba Abdullah al-Hussein, they were not fighting for an immediate military victory. He knew they were fighting for martyrdom, and the ashab also knew that. And that's why, from the perspective of Imam al-Hussein, he knew that the people who would live longer would suffer for longer. So that's why he wanted to ease the suffering of his ashab. That's why he allowed them to go first. But from the perspective of the ashab, the reason why they were so keen to go first was because as Ansar and ashab of Aba Abdullah al-Hussein, they were telling Imam al-Hussein, there is no way that while we are alive and breathing and our heart is beating, that Al-Qasim should fall from his horse in front of our eyes. We cannot let that happen. That Aun and Muhammad should be killed in front of our eyes. We cannot allow for that to happen. That the arms of Abul Fadl Abbas should be severed and we are looking. That cannot happen. That's why we will go first. And ya Imam, as long as we are there, they'll not get to you. The only way they can get to you is over our dead bodies. And that's why one by one the ashab and ansar of Aba Abdullah keep marching to the battlefield. They keep on fighting. The numbers of Imam al-Hussein begin to dwindle. At this point, I crave your permission to narrate to you the Masaaib of a companion of the Imam who doesn't get mentioned. Although living here in the West, in nominally Christian countries, we need to be honoring this sacrifice. I want to talk about the Kalbi family. Mention to you their Masaaib. They are a family from a Christian background. They represent the Christian contribution to Karbala. They meet Imam al-Hussein on his road to Kufa and they join him. First the father goes. He fights very bravely and he's martyred. And after him, it is the turn of his son Wahab al-Kalbi. Wahab al-Kalbi comes to Aba Abdullah al-Hussein. After getting permission from him, he comes to his tent to bid farewell to his mother and to his wife. Allahu Akbar. This is a newlywed couple. Those of you who are newly married would know how difficult it is for the heart of a husband and the heart of a wife to bid farewell to each other under these circumstances. Allahu Akbar. The wife of Wahab hugs him and she refuses to let go of him. She says, Ya Wahab, la tafja'ni bi nafsik. She says, I'm your newly married bride. If you leave me, what am I going to do after you? How am I going to bear the pain of separation? Allahu Akbar. His mother also comes. She hugs him. She says, oh my son, this is very difficult for all of us. But I want you to think how difficult it is for the children of Rasulullah who have been crying al-atash from the morning. Qum wansur awlad Rasulillah. She says, I want you to give your life in defense of the children of Rasulullah. Wahab al-Kalbi sits on his horse. He goes and challenges the enemy. He recites the lines of Rajz. He says, In tunkiruni fa'ana ibnul kalbi sawfa tarawni wa tarawn darbi wa sawlati wa jawlati fil harbi. He says, my name is, if you don't recognize me, my name is Wahab. I am the Kalbi. The reason why he said, if you don't recognize me, because when he advanced towards the army of Yazid, they were looking at him in astonishment. They were giving him strange looks because they knew he was from a Christian background. So they were wondering, what is this person from a Christian background doing in the army of Aba Abdullah al-Hussein? Why is he coming to fight us? So that's why Wahab al-Kalbi says, in tunkiruni fa ana ibn al-Kalbi. If you don't recognize me, I am the same Wahab that you know. I am Wahab al-Kalbi, and very soon you are going to get a taste of my bravery. Saying that, he advances towards the enemy. He fights against them with great valor. A contingent from the army of Yazid is sent to dispatch him. But Allahu Akbar, he wreaks havoc. He destroys them completely, and he returns back to the tent victorious. He comes to his mother. Look at the mothers of Karbala. He says, Araditi anni ya ummah. She says, oh mother, did you see my fighting? Did I do you proud? Did I make you proud? His mother, with tears in her eyes, says, oh my son, لَنْ أَرْضَ عَنْكَ حَتَّى أَرَاكَ مُضَمَّخًا بِدَمِ الشَّهَادَةِ. She says, oh my son, I will not be proud and I'll not be pleased until I see you stained with the blood of martyrdom. Allahu Akbar. Once again he bids farewell to his wife and to his mother. His wife again comes out and says, don't leave me, O Wahab, don't leave me alone here. I cannot live without you. Don't go and fight the enemy. Allahu Akbar. Wahab consoles her. He mounts back on his horse and he goes to fight. The Ansar of Imam al-Hussein are very few and far between now. He continues to fight. The riwayah in the Maqtal says, after a short while, he hears a voice calling him from behind, saying, Ya Wahab, qatil dun at-tayyibin, dhurriyati Muhammadin. She says, the voice says, O Wahab, fight against the enemies of Al Muhammad. Fight in defense of the honor of Al Muhammad and Imam al-Hussein. He turns behind. Who does he see? It is his wife. She has a pole in her hand that she has come armed with. Allahu Akbar. As soon as he looks at her, tears fill his eyes. He says, قبل قليل كنت تنهينني عن القتال والآن جئت تقاتلين معي. He says, only a few moments back you were discouraging me from going to the battlefield. You were telling me not to leave you, and now you have come and you're telling me to fight, and you want to fight yourself as well. What happened? You know what she replied? She said, Ya Wahab, la talumni, inna wa'iyat al-Husayn kasarat qalbi. She says, oh Wahab, do not blame me. I'm not to blame for this. The cry of Aba Abdullah al-Husayn broke my heart. He says, Malladhi sami'ti min. He says, what did you hear him saying? She says, I heard him surveying, I saw him surveying the battlefield, looking at those of his supporters who were left and looking at those who had died, and I heard him cry out, Wa qillata nasira. Oh, how few supporters I have been left with. She says, as soon as I heard that, I said, if our Imam is left with few supporters, I, being a woman, will come to his defense. Allahu Akbar. Wahab al-Kalbi pleads with her to go back, but the enemies strike him. They surround him from all sides. They throw him to the ground. They sever his head. Allahu Akbar. Wahab al-Kalbi's wife comes. She sits beside him. She takes the head, places it in his lap. She kisses it and she says, As'alullah, I ask Allah an yulhiqani bik, to join me with you. Allahu Akbar. Shimr was noticing this. He gives the command to Rustam, his slave. He says, go and strike that woman. That slave comes to that woman. He strikes her with full force. She goes on to become the first female martyr in the battle of Karbala. Allahu Akbar. After that, the Shuhada of Karbala, the Ansar of Aba Abdullah, one by one, they keep on going to the battlefield. Burayr ibn Khudayr is martyred. Habib ibn Mudahir al-Asadi is martyred. One by one, they're all being martyred. The time for Salah comes. Abu Sumam al-Sa'idi approaches Imam al-Hussein. He says, Ya Imam, we want to pray this last Salah with you. Imam al-Hussein gives him the dua. He says, Ja'alaka Allah ma'al musallin. May Allah resurrect you on the day of judgment with those who are punctual in their prayers. Imam al-Hussein asks them to request the enemy to halt the battle so that they can offer Salatul Dhuhr. But the enemy does not listen. Imam al-Hussein begins the Salatul Dhuhr. Syed ibn Abdullah al-Hanafi comes and stands beside Aba Abdullah. Zuhair ibn al-Qayn supports him from the other side. Allahu Akbar. Have you ever seen a salah like this? The enemies begin to rain down arrows. As soon as any arrow comes near Aba Abdullah, Syed ibn Abdullah steps forward. He takes the arrow on his chest. Another arrow comes. Zuhair ibn al-Qayn takes his takes it on his chest until the body of Syed ibn Abdullah al-Hanafi is riddled with arrows. So much so that the riwayah in the Maqtal says that as soon as Imam said the final salam, Syed ibn Abdullah called out to the Imam. He said, Alayka minni salam, Aba Abdullah. He says, Ya Imam, please accept my final salam as well. The riwayah in the Maqtal says his body looked like a hedgehog, like a porcupine. It was studded with arrows. Imam al-Hussein looks up to him. He cannot even see him because all the arrows are on his body. Syed looks out to Imam al-Hussein. He says, Awafaytu yabna Rasulillah. I hope I have been able to show my loyalty, yabna Rasulillah. Imam al-Hussein says, Anta amami fil Jannah. I will make sure you enter Jannah before me. Allahu Akbar. After that, those who remained of the Ansar of Imam al-Hussein, Zuhair ibn al-Qayn and the rest, they go and meet with their martyrdom. And then after that, it is the time of the Ahlul Bayt. They go one by one. Al-Qasim is martyred. Auna Muhammad is martyred. The children of Aqil are martyred. Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas is martyred. Aliyun al-Akbar is martyred. Until Aliyun al-Asghar has also been martyred. They've all met with martyrdom. Now Imam al-Hussein is left with no man. He is all by himself. He has no defender. He has no protector. Allahu Akbar. He now comes and stands in front of the tent because now he knows this is the final farewell. Allahu Akbar. May Allah increase and amplify your ajr, O Azadar of Imam al-Hussein. He comes and stands outside the tents and he gives the nida. He calls out. He says, Ya Zainab, Ya Kulthum, Ya Rabab, Ya Ruqayya, Ya Sukayna, alaykunna minni akhiru salam. He says, oh the women folk of my family, O Zainab, O Kulthum, O Ruqayya, O Rabab, accept my final farewell and my final salutations. Allahu Akbar. When the babies hear this call of Aba Abdullah, there is commotion in the tents. They all come out of the tents. They surround Aba Abdullah. They begin to hug him and kiss him. Allahu Akbar. They are looking at his face. They know this is probably the last time they will get to see this blessed face. Allahu Akbar. They bid him farewell one by one. The last one to bid him farewell is Sayyida Zainab. Sayyida Zainab takes him to the tent of Imam Zainul Abidin, where he passes on the office of the Imamah to Imam al-Sajjad. When Imam al-Sajjad sees the condition of Imam al-Hussein and he finds out from him that he's going for the final jihad, he says, but Baba, how are you going? Aina ammi al-Abbas. Where is my uncle Abbas? Aina akhi Ali Akbar. Where is my brother Ali al-Akbar? Aina al-Qasim. Allahu Akbar. One by one he starts listing the names. Imam al-Hussein says, oh my son, let me just tell you this much, that among the men you are the only one that is left. They did not even spare the little baby Asghar. When Imam al-Sajjad hears this, he calls for his sword and his asa. He says, oh my father, let me go and fight for you. Imam al-Hussein and Sayyida Zainab make him sit down. They say, no, you have a mission after this. Then the Imam again re-emerges from the tent. The babies once again bid farewell. But Allahu Akbar, this is the toughest scene for us to describe. Because after the Imam has bid farewell to the babies, he sees someone is missing. There is someone who has not come to bid him farewell. But the Imam cannot go. The heart of the father cannot leave for the battlefield without bidding farewell to this girl. So he turns to Zainab with a look of concern and worry on his face. He says, Aina bunayyati Sukayna. Where is my daughter Sukayna, O Zainab? Why has she not come to bid me farewell? How can I go to the battlefield without seeing her for one last time? Zainab responds by saying, Hiya jalisatun bi kasri al-khiba, la tutiqu wada'aka wada' al-maut. She is hiding inside one of the tents. She cannot see you leave for the battlefield. She cannot take it. She will not be able to see you leave. And that is why she has hidden herself in one of the tents. Imam al-Hussein says, "Oh Zainab, take me to her." Bibi Zainab takes him to the tent of Bibi Sukaina. When he enters the tent, what does he see? He وَجَدَهَا وَاضِعَةً رَأْسَهَا بَيْنَ رُكْبَتَيْهَا. He saw her sitting on the floor. Her head was between her knees and she was weeping bitterly. Imam al-Hussein picks her up into his lap. He hugs her, he showers her with kisses. He says, "Oh Sukaina, this is the final farewell." She looks up at him, she says, "Baba, why are you leaving me? If it is water that you are going to get, then after Abbas, none of the children have been saying al-Atash. We don't want water. Baba, stay with us." Everyone who went to the battlefield never came back. If you go, you will not come back. Imam al-Hussein explains to her. He says, "Oh Sukaina, I have to leave. Give me permission." She says, "Baba, but I sleep on your chest. After you, on whose chest will I sleep?" Imam says, "You will be sleeping on the chest of Rabab from now on." Allahu Akbar. I don't know how the Imam manages to get out of the tent. He comes and he sits on his horse. For the final time, he urges his horse forward. The horse moves a few steps, but then it stops. It comes to a halt. The Imam has a strange connection with his horse. It's like the Imam understands the horse and the horse understands him. He addresses the horse. He says, "Oh my loyal horse, I know you have been through a lot today, but I ask of you, take me to the battlefield one final time. I promise you your ordeal will be over after this." The horse lowers its head. Imam al-Hussein is forced to look down. What does he see? It's his little daughter Sukaina. She is grasping hold of the legs of the horse and is saying, "Oh horse, I ask you in the name of Allah, do not take my father to the battlefield. Do not take him to his death." Allahu Akbar. Imam al-Hussein looks at her. He says, "Bunayya Sukaina madha turidin." He says, "Oh my daughter, what can I do for you? What do you want from me?" You know what she says? This is the toughest scene in the entire maqtal. She says, "Ya abatah inzil min ala dhahri farasik." She says, "Baba, get down from your horse one final time, one last time." Imam al-Hussein dismounts from his horse. He picks her up again. He kisses her and he hugs her. And then he says, "Wal'an bunayya madha turidin." He says, "Oh my daughter, what is it that you want?" She says, "Ya abatah mud yadak wamsah biha ala ra'si." He says, "Oh my father, are you not going to extend your hand on my head like you have been doing for all the orphans?" Allahu Akbar, our Madhloom Imam. He had to see his daughter orphaned in his life. Allahu Akbar, Imam places his hand on his daughter. After that, he mounts on the horse again. He goes and fights the enemy. He wreaks havoc into the army of Yazid. The reporters narrate, they say, "We have never seen a soldier, we have never seen a warrior who fought so fiercely after losing all his relatives, after having lost all of his companions. The bravery and the valor with which he fought was truly remarkable. After defeating them and sending them to their retreat, he once again returns back to Sayyida Zainab for one final time to get his final garments from Sayyida Zainab. Bibi Zainab comes and offers him his last garment, which is supposed to be his kafan. He wears it on himself, and after that, Bibi Zainab salamullahi alayha does something really strange. She kisses him on the neck, and after kissing him on the neck, she says, "Nafadhtul wasiyya." I have done what I was told. Imam al-Hussein says, "What were you told?" She says, "When my mother Fatima Zahra was on her deathbed, she had said, 'Zainab, when Hussein comes to you the last time, you are to kiss him on his neck on my behalf, because that is where the sword of Shimr will strike him.'" Allahu Akbar. When Imam al-Hussein hears this, he grabs hold of the arms of Sayyida Zainab and he kisses her there. And then when Zainab asks why, he says, "When our father was on the deathbed, he asked me to kiss you here because this is where the ropes will go." Allahu Akbar. The Imam mounts his horse for the final time. He proceeds towards the battlefield. He engages the enemy. He destroys everyone who comes in front of him. But Allahu Akbar, after that Umar ibn Sa'ad gives the command. He says, "Oh people, are you crazy? Have you lost your heads and your minds? This is Ibn Qattal al-Arab. This is the son of the most fierce warrior of the Arabs. Do not engage him in simple combat. Do not come near him because he'll finish you off. Retreat to a distance and then throw him and attack him with everything you've got." So the army retreats. They begin to pelt him with stones, with rocks, with spears, with swords. Everything that they can find, they begin to throw it in the direction of Aba Abdullah. And then they viciously attack him from all sides. They strike him from all sides. Imam al-Hussein is now on his horse. He has been struck by so many arrows. He has been struck by so many spears. He is losing his balance now. Allahu Akbar, a time comes when Aba Abdullah al-Hussein falls from his horse. He falls onto the battlefield of Karbala. The riwayah says he was suspended in the air. Some say he was suspended because of the arrows that were coming out of his body. The poet says, "No, my heart tells me it was his mother Fatima who had come to receive him." Allahu Akbar. Imam al-Hussein is now on the plains of Karbala, but the enemies cannot come near him. There is so much jalal and jamal on his face that Hilal ibn Nafi' says that there was so much nur coming out of his face that I could not go near him. Allahu Akbar. This is the moment when we are told in the Maqtal that Sayyida Zainab went up the Tallay Zainabiyya from where she could observe the battlefield. What does she see? She sees her brother Al-Hussein is sitting on the sand of Karbala. The enemies have surrounded him from all sides. She calls out, she looks around, there is no Abbas, there is no Ali Akbar. So who does she call out to? She calls out to Umar ibn Sa'ad. She says, "Ay Umar, ayuqtal Abu Abdullah wa anta tanzuru ilay." She says, "Will you allow my brother to be massacred and butchered while you are watching?" Allahu Akbar. Umar ibn Sa'ad gives the command. He says, "Inzilu ilayhi wa rihu." What are you people waiting for? Get down and finish him off. After that we are told, Shimr ibn Dhil Jawshan, these are the last scenes. He steps forward. He looks at Aba Abdullah. He is sitting on the floors of Karbala. He is placing sands on his wounds. He is saying, "Bismillah wa billah wa ala millati Rasulillah." Shimr steps forward. The riwayah in the Maqtal says, do you have the strength to listen to this? He steps forward. فَرَفَسَهُ بِرِجْلِهِ. He strikes the chest of Aba Abdullah with his leg. Imam al-Hussein falls flat on the plains of Karbala. Shimr ibn Dhil Jawshan mounts the chest of Aba Abdullah. He lifts Rafa'a shaybatahu al-muqaddasa. He raises the beard of Aba Abdullah and grasps this in his hand. And then the riwayah in the Maqtal says, وَضَرَبَهُ بِالسَّيْفِ إِثْنَتَيْ عَشَرَةَ ضَرْبًا. He raises his sword and he strikes Aba Abdullah 12 times. وَاهْتَزَّ رَأْسَهُ الْمُقَدَّسِ. He severs the head of Aba Abdullah and he lifts it on a spear. The floor of Karbala undergoes an earthquake and a cry resounds from the heavens. أَلَا قُتِلَ الْحُسَيْنُ بِكَرْبَلَا. أَلَا ذُبِحَ الْحُسَيْنُ بِكَرْبَلَا. Hussein has been killed at Karbala. Hussein has been martyred at Karbala. The last riwayah I will share, Bibi Salama narrates, Ibn Abbas narrates that on this time they saw a dream. In their vision they see Rasulullah, the messenger of Allah. They see his whole body is stained with blood. His beard is red. He has sand on his head and he's weeping profusely. Salama says, "Ya Rasulullah, what has happened?" Allahu Akbar. Rasulullah says, "Oh Salama, do you not know what has happened? قُتِلَ وَلَدِيَ الْحُسَيْنِ بِكَرْبَلَا وَهُوَ عَطْشَانٌ." My son Hussein was massacred at Karbala in a state of hunger and thirst.